Hi, Matt. This is Eirini. Thank you so much for speaking to me. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
Uh, First of all, I cried so much watching this film. Oh my God. It's really emotional. It's a great film, like really, really
Thank you.
good. And I definitely recommend it. What made you want to do it?
I think when you meet someone living with EB, you'll do whatever you can to help. And, as a filmmaker and storyteller, I met a little boy who you see in the film, Eli, 6 years ago, I guess, when we were producing a television show on ABC that was youth empowerment focused. And I was just so inspired by Eli's spirit and how it wasn't broken despite the devastating disease he was living with. And, I connected with the betters who had, at that point, recently started EB Research Partnership with a group of families and just kind of said, what can we do to help in our small way? And we've been working together ever since.
How did you meet him?
How did I meet Eli?
Yeah.
So, I used to produce this television show on ABC called We Day. And it was sort of a youth empowerment show of kids across America doing service work in their communities. And Eli and his little sister, Lily, they were both 8 and 6 at the time, they had started this campaign called Come Say Hi to Eli that we discovered. And the essence of the campaign was, Eli's living with this very visible, devastating condition. And, instead of staring at him, they made these little cards and T-shirts that say, come say hi to Eli. Instead of staring, and we'll tell you about the disease. So it was such a powerful message from two very young kids. And that was our introduction to EB.
Okay. Okay. And what made you actually want to do a film? Because obviously, we can meet different people, but what was it that made you want to do a film for EB?
Well, I think when you meet this community and it is a rare disease, but it also is a very rare community in that it's a group of people who are doing whatever they can, whether they're a rock star or a philanthropist or a scientist or a family to help cure this disease. And, in a world that's very divided, where it's hard to get people, out of their silos and come together to, solve seemingly impossible problems, that this was a group of people that were moving mountains for, a disease that was virtually unheard of. And so I found that to be a really inspiring story, and to also see that actual change was happening, like tangible difference from when, EB Research Partnership started its organization a little over 10 years ago, where there were no treatments, no hope, or very little, to where we are today. We started the film in 2020, late 2023, and there was only one FDA approved treatment, as you see in the film. But now we premiered at Tribeca a week and a half ago or so, and now there are three FDA approved treatments. So not
Mm.
to simplify the science, but it's moving fast, and it's really exciting.
So what do you think made it so there can be FDA approved treatments? What was it was it the people from the AB community that pushed so hard that drove that? What is it?
It's a collective, it's families and patients advocating for themselves. It's patient organizations like EB Research Partnership who are driving the funding through a very unique model, to raise funds and find the research that is actually going to return on their investment so they can fund more research. And it's the scientists, they are magicians who
Mm.
are doing the work and working very hard around the world to cure this disease. And then, you're lucky to have not just ambassadors, but co-founders, like Eddie Vedder and his wife Jill, who are, using their platform to drive awareness, and raise funds to ultimately, have more treatments and ultimately cure the disease, because that's what the patients want.
And how did they get involved? And how did they become co-founders?
Yeah, so Jill Vetter had a family friend whose son was born with EB, and I think they sort of said, like, how can we help? So with a group of families, they got together and they started EB Research Partnership, which main mandate was to find and foster research, clinical research in the U.S. and around the world that would ultimately provide treatments and a cure for the disease.
Okay. And the concert,
Mhm.
how did that happen? How did you go about actually did you create that, or was it something that was happening and then you want to record it?
Yeah, so Ed Vedder is, and the Michael Hunt from EB Research Partnership, and Jill, Ed's wife, had this idea to do some benefit concerts in their hometown in Seattle, and also have a summit, which you see, maybe one of the first of its kind, to have researchers and doctors and patients, come to Seattle, talk about the exciting research that's happening, and then also kind of celebrate some milestones, through these concerts and raise some money. So when that was happening, Eddie asked, would you like to film these? And of course, we said yes, we'd love to. And at the same time, we'd been following a lot of families over the years, and they were coming to Seattle for the concert. So then we said, well, let's follow these families, tell their stories, and see the trajectory of their lives, and then this sort of like big moment, for the community.
Mm-hmm. Those families, did they want to be filmed? Did they offer to be filmed, or did they have to be convinced to be filmed?
No, this is how amazing all of these people are. Is there's no convincing. I think obviously as a filmmaker, there's trust that is built, and I'm very lucky to have become very close and friends with these families. But I think again, it comes down. You see this in the film a little bit of whether it's patients giving themselves to science, for research that may help others that are younger, that won't affect them. It's very selfless. And I think also part of that is being an advocate. So all of the families were very selfless. And we were very lucky for them to let us into their lives and be able to like share their stories, because it's as you see in the film, it's very hard to live with.
Hmm.
But their resilience and in their fortitude, it's I think hopefully people walk away feeling really hopeful and inspired.
And is this what the film is trying to achieve? Like feeling hopeful and inspired, or is it more awareness? Is it funding? What is the film trying to achieve?
Well, I think for myself, if you leave this watching feeling hope,
Mm.
I think that was a major theme that was a very important to us, because it's not false hope. We're seeing real change happening. And I think, again, in a world where, seemingly impossible problems seem unsolvable, I hope that this film is an example of what you can do when a community comes together to solve a problem. And the second thing, and maybe equally as important, that I hope that people feel inspired to take action. The father in the film, Jason Haller, says, there's a milestone here that we have an FDA approved treatment. You see his daughter Rowan getting treated in the film, which is just massive for these families at the time. But again, it's not a cure, and that's what they want to keep pushing for. So I hope that people feel inspired to look a little deeper, and if they can help out, to help us push this research over to more treatments, and then ultimately illuminate an end game for this disease.
Do you think this is going to help other diseases, this film, with finding
Yeah, well,
some sort?
this is the really exciting thing about EB, is that a lot of the scientists are saying, since EB is a single gene mutation, it's a
Mm.
monogenetic disease.
Mhm.
So not to simplify what the scientists do, but it really is removing the faulty gene and replacing it with the corrected gene. And so what that means for other diseases like Tay-Sachs or cystic fibrosis or sickle cell anemia, which is also a single gene mutation, that the research happening with EB could also dovetail into thousands of other rare diseases.
Mm-hmm. And where do we stand now with EB? Because I've seen, obviously, there are 3 treatments that you said, but do they cure it? How far have they advanced so far?
Well, like I said, in October of 2023, there was one FDA-approved treatment that was only a few months old. Since then, up until 2 weeks ago, now there are 3. So in terms of science, I think that's moving quite quickly. I think the hope is that there's more excitement around that. More funding can be fostered for the organizations like EB Research Partnership, and then that we move closer and closer to more treatments. The current FDA-approved treatments affect one subtype of EB, but there are other types of EB that don't have any treatments, and so those patients or families are hoping for that soon. So the ultimate goal, is cure. But in the meantime, I think, the excitement around fostering new treatments that change the quality of life for these patients is at the forefront, with that goal, that sort of moonshot, of curing the disease down the road.
Do you think we'll be able to see another film potentially that will show where the patients have come, and then, kind of like a part 2 potentially?
That'd be nice. Yeah, let's make a very short one that just says that it's cured and these kids can live,
Yeah.
quote unquote, normal lives and do the things that healthy kids, maybe take for granted.
Mm-hmm. How was it perceived at Tribeca, and have you been to other festivals?
Tribeca was a huge hit. We had a wonderful premiere. I believe there was 600 people. We had additional screenings that were also sold out, and I think it was very well received. I think people, from what we were told, people were deeply moved. Hopefully that translates into action and maybe just looking into the disease some more. But I think people left feeling hopeful, and so we hope to replicate that across North America and the world soon, so people can learn more about this disease, but also, again, going back to the dad in the film, is to help foster more treatments and ultimately a cure for the disease.
And whether that can be passed to other countries as well, because, if you have an FDA-approved medicine, obviously that's very US specific, but I will be curious to know what other countries are doing with EB. Yeah,
there's research happening across the globe. There's EB Research Partnership has offices in Australia, where there's incredible research happening across the country there, as well as in Germany and Canada. So it really is a global endeavor. To your point, yes, when treatments get approved in the United States, that it's like, yeah, okay, there's patients around the world that would love that treatment as well. So it's about breaking those barriers and making sure that we're getting medicine from the bench to the bedside of a patient.
Yeah, because I know if FDA approved medicine in the States, sometimes they're not approved in Europe, and so you kind of need a medicine that will be approved worldwide and that will be accepted by the patients, and you also need to see how each patient is going to react as well. So, yeah. What are you planning to do with this film after, obviously, Tribeca is over now? And then what other plans do you have yourself apart from this film?
I think we're working on that now, and I think the hope is ultimately, every decision that's been made through the film is, what is the greatest impact we can have on the community, on the EB community. So whether that's doing specialized screenings and to raise more funds, and ultimately on a streamer, so there's a larger awareness play and more people get to see the film and learn about the disease and hopefully take action. So those are the things we're working on right now. And so hopefully, you know, and very soon we will be able to have an announcement of where you can see the film next.
Okay. Okay, great. And are you working on anything else apart from this film? Do you have anything else planned?
You know, I think after you work on something like this for a couple years, at least, you know, you want to take just a breath. And, you know, I think with this film, I hope we're just getting started coming out of a very successful premiere at Tribeca, that, you know, that we can, you know, ultimately the film can be used to, again, foster more funding for research to help get more treatments out the door.
Okay. Okay. Well, best of luck for the film. I loved
you.
watching it so much. And I definitely recommend it. So thank you so much
Thanks.
for speaking to me as well. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
You too.